The Glacial Dragon's Tamer. In the neon-drenched streets of Shinjuku, Kumi, a sharp-tongued Japanese-Russian orphan, is surrendered as a debt servant to the most feared Pakhan in the East, Kazimir Volkov. Known as the Glacial Dragon, Kazimir is a man of absolute silence and lethal precision. He expects a submissive maid. He gets a whirlwind in an apron. Kumi doesn't tremble at his glare. She scolds him for his messy desk and literally twists his ear when he tries to skip dinner for a hit job. Kazimir is floored by her audacity, and his icy exterior begins to melt. But when a treacherous lieutenant convinces Kumi that Kazimir is planning to trade her life for a shipping route, she vanishes into the Hokkaido wilderness. Kazimir must abandon his throne to find her, proving that the man who terrified a nation is nothing without the woman who dared to punish him. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and follow for more. The Dragon's New Shadow. The rain in Tokyo didn't just fall, it screamed. Inside the obsidian glass penthouse of the Volkov estate, the air was thick with the scent of gunpowder and expensive cologne. Kazimir Volkov, the man they called the Glacial Dragon, sat behind his desk, as cold and unmoving as a statue. On the floor, a man was begging for his life. It was Kumi's uncle, and he had just gambled away something that wasn't his to lose. "I don't have the 5 million, Kazimir-sama," the uncle wailed, his forehead pressed into the expensive rug. "But I brought her. The girl. She's young, she's strong, she'll work off the debt." Kazimir didn't even look up from the pistol he was cleaning. "I don't need a girl," he muttered, his voice like dry ice. "I need my money." But then, the double doors swung open. Kumi didn't crawl in, and she didn't cry. She marched into the room, soaked to the bone, looking less like a victim and more like an angry storm. She took one look at her uncle and scoffed. "Get up, uncle. You're getting snot on the carpet, and I'm the one who's going to have to clean it." The guards actually gasped. Nobody spoke to the Pakhan's guests like that. Kazimir finally raised his head. His eyes were a piercing, frozen blue, designed to make grown men tremble. He stood up, his massive frame casting a shadow over her. "You must be Kumi," he said, stepping into her personal space. "Do you realize you've been sold? You belong to the Volkov family now. You are a maid. A ghost. You speak only when I allow it." Most girls would have fainted. "Kumi?" She just crossed her arms and stared him right in the eye. "And you must be Kazimir. For a man with $5 million, you have terrible taste in ties. That knot is amateur." Before Kazimir could react, Kumi did the unthinkable. She reached out, grabbed his silk tie, and tightened it with a sharp jerk. The guards reached for their guns, but Kazimir froze, stunned by the sheer audacity of this tiny woman. "If I'm going to be a ghost in this house," Kumi whispered, leaning in so close she could smell the tobacco on his breath, "then you're going to be a boss that actually looks the part. Now, show me the kitchen. You look like you've been living on coffee and spite, and it's making your skin look dull." Kazimir stared at her for a long beat. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Then, a slow, dark smirk spread across his face, a look his men had never seen before. "Show her the maid's quarters," Kazimir commanded, his eyes never leaving hers. "And someone get me a drink. I think life in this house is about to get very complicated." Don't forget to subscribe, like, and follow for more of this story. You won't believe what Kumi does to his office in the next chapter. The Forbidden Office. Kazimir Volkov was a man of absolute routine. He woke up at 5 a.m., handled 3 assassinations before breakfast, and kept his private study locked with a biometric scanner. It was his sanctuary, a place filled with top-secret ledgers, blueprints of the city's underground, and enough weapons to start a small war. Nobody entered. Not even his highest-ranking guards. That was until Kumi found the spare key Kazimir had hidden inside a hollowed-out Russian dictionary. When Kazimir returned from a particularly bloody meeting at the docks, he expected to find Kumi scrubbing the floors of the foyer. Instead, he found the doors to his private sanctuary wide open. His heart skipped a beat, not out of fear, but out of pure, unadulterated rage. He burst through the doors, hand already reaching for the holster at his hip. Kumi! I told you to never. He stopped dead in his tracks. His office, which usually smelled of old paper and gunpowder, now smelled of lemon zest and lavender. The stacks of disorganized files that had cluttered his desk for years were gone. In their place were neat, color-coded folders. His collection of vintage daggers, which he kept scattered for easy access, were now polished and displayed in a perfect glass case. But the worst part? Kumi was standing on a ladder, using a feather duster on his antique katana. What have you done to my room? Kazimir roared, his voice shaking the windows. Kumi didn't even look down. I'm doing you a favor, Kazimir. Your filing system was a crime against humanity. How do you expect to run a criminal empire when you can't even find your tax evasion receipts? Kazimir stomped over to the ladder and grabbed the sides, forcing her to look at him. Those weren't just papers. Those were names of people I've eliminated. Those were routes for my shipments. You've touched things that people have died just to see. Kumi finally climbed down, stepping off the last rung so she was inches from his chest. She didn't look scared. She looked disappointed. And you have bloodstains on your favorite rug, Kazimir. If you spend all your time worrying about routes and eliminations, you're going to die in a very messy house. Is that how you want to be remembered? As the Pakhan who lived in a pigsty? Kazimir grabbed her wrist, his icy blue eyes flashing with a dangerous light. You are a maid, Kumi. A servant. You are not my mother, and you are certainly not my boss. Kumi didn't pull away. Instead, she used her free hand to reach up and, for the second time, twist his ear. And you are a man who is clearly stressed because he hasn't had a proper night's sleep in a room that doesn't smell like a locker room. Now, I've put your elimination list in the red folder under M4 mistakes you should stop making. Go take a shower. I'm making gyoza, and if you're late, I'm giving yours to the guards. She patted his cheek and walked out, humming a Japanese folk song. Kazimir stood in the middle of his perfectly organized, lemon-scented office, staring at the red folder. For the first time in his life, the most feared man in Tokyo felt completely powerless. Is Kumi pushing her luck too far, or is the dragon actually starting to enjoy the discipline? Don't forget to subscribe, like, and follow for more. Blood on the kimono. The thing about being the most feared man in Tokyo is that your enemies are always watching for a crack in the armor. And for Kazimir Volkov, that crack was currently wearing a white apron and humming in his kitchen. Word had spread through the underworld that the glacial dragon had gone soft. Rumors said he was being bossed around by a debt servant, a girl who didn't even have a family name to protect her. Maxim, a brutal rival from a splintered Bratva cell, decided it was time to test if the dragon still had his fire. Kazimir was away at a high-stakes negotiation, leaving the estate under light security, or so Maxim thought. Kumi was in the courtyard, wearing a beautiful, vintage silk kimono she'd found in a forgotten trunk. She was carefully trimming the bonsai trees when the front gates were smashed open by a black SUV. 6 armed men stormed out, led by Maxim's top enforcer. They expected to find a screaming girl. Instead, they found Kumi standing perfectly still, holding a pair of heavy-duty gardening shears. You're trespassing, Kumi said, her voice eerily calm. And you've just crushed the hydrangeas I planted this morning. I suggest you leave before things get messy. The enforcer laughed, reaching out to grab her hair. The boss wants to see what the dragon is hiding. You're coming with. He never finished the sentence. Kumi didn't wait for a hero. She swung the heavy shears, catching the man across the forearm, and dove behind a stone lantern just as bullets began to shred the cherry blossoms. She wasn't a fighter, but she had grown up on the streets of Vladivostok and Tokyo. She knew how to survive. Suddenly, the air went cold. The sound of a high-powered engine roared at the gates, and a silver Lexus skidded into the courtyard. Kazimir didn't even wait for the car to stop before he was out, a suppressed submachine gun in his hands. He didn't look like the man who let Kumi twist his ear anymore. He looked like a god of death. In less than 60 seconds, the courtyard was silent again. Kazimir dropped his weapon and sprinted toward the stone lantern. His face, usually an unreadable mask of ice, was twisted with a terror he had never felt before. "Kumi! Are you?" He stopped, his eyes falling on the sleeve of her kimono, stained dark with someone else's blood. He grabbed her shoulders, his hands shaking. "I told you to stay inside. Why didn't you hide?" Kumi looked up at him, her eyes fierce. "And let them ruin the garden?" "I don't think so, Kazimir. Besides, you were late. Again." Kazimir pulled her into a crushing hug, burying his face in the crook of her neck. The guard stood back, stunned. Their boss, the man who viewed emotions as a death sentence, was clinging to a maid as if she were the only thing keeping him grounded. "If they touched you," Kazimir hissed, his voice vibrating against her skin, "I would have burned this entire city to the ground." Kumi pulled back just enough to look him in the eye. She saw the raw, bleeding affection he was trying so hard to hide. She reached up, not to twist his ear this time, but to wipe a stray splash of blood off his cheek. "Well," she whispered, "you're here now. But you're still doing the dishes tonight. My kimono is ruined, and I'm in a very bad mood." Kazimir let out a short, dry laugh, the first real laugh his men had heard in years. "Fine. But only if you stop calling me grumpy in front of the help. The dragon is starting to show his scales, but Maxim isn't finished yet. How far will Kazimir go to protect his debt servant? Don't forget to subscribe, like, and follow for more." In Chapter 4, Kumi decides to teach Kazimir a lesson in humility that he'll never forget. The art of the punishment. The morning after the shootout, the Volkov estate was buzzing with a new kind of tension. Kazimir had spent the entire night on the phone, ordering retributions that made even his veteran hitmen turn pale. He was back in his dragon persona, cold, ruthless, and radiating a dark energy that kept everyone at least 10 feet away. Except for Kumi. She watched him from the doorway of his study as he barked orders at his lieutenants. He was acting out, using violence to cover up the fact that he had been scared for her. To Kumi, he didn't look like a Mafia king. He looked like a child throwing a dangerous tantrum. "Enough." Kumi's voice cut through the room like a whip. Kazimir paused mid-sentence, a phone in one hand and a glass of whiskey in the other. His men froze, expecting Kumi to finally be sent to the dungeons. Kazimir narrowed his eyes. "Not now, Kumi. I am busy ensuring that Maxim's bloodline ends today." Kumi marched over, snatched the whiskey from his hand, and slammed it onto the desk. "You're busy acting like a monster because you're too embarrassed to admit you were worried. Your men are exhausted, the staff is terrified, and you've skipped breakfast again. I am the Pakhan." Kazimir roared, slamming his fist on the table. "I do not eat breakfast when my honor is at stake." Kumi didn't blink. She leaned over the desk, her face inches from his. "Since you want to act like a heartless beast, you can start by learning what real work looks like. You think your power comes from that gun? No. It comes from the people who keep this house running while you play war." She grabbed him by the arm, the ear twist was coming, and Kazimir actually winced before she even touched him. "New rule, Kazimir. For every life you threatened to take this morning, you're going to do something to give back to this house. Starting now." 10 minutes later, the high-ranking members of the Volkov Bratva witnessed the eighth wonder of the world. Kazimir Volkov, the glacial dragon, was standing in the backyard of the estate, knee-deep in a tub of soapy water, hand-washing the heavy linen laundry of the elderly kitchen staff. "This is humiliating," Kazimir hissed, scrubbing a bedsheet with enough force to tear it. "If the Tokyo Yakuza see me like this, my reputation is dead." Kumi sat nearby on a stool, peeling apples. "Reputation is what people think of you. Character is who you are when you're scrubbing socks. Keep scrubbing, Kazimir." "You missed a spot." One of his lieutenants approached, looking terrified. "Boss, we have information on Maxim's location." "Should we?" Kazimir looked at the man, then at Kumi, who raised a warning eyebrow. Kazimir sighed, his shoulders dropping. "Tell the men to wait." "Aye." I have to finish the whites first. The lieutenant backed away, questioning his entire reality. For the rest of the afternoon, Kazimir didn't give a single order for an execution. Instead, he worked until his hands were raw and his back ached. By the time the sun began to set, the dark, manic energy in his eyes had been replaced by a strange, quiet calm. He walked over to Kumi, smelling of lemon soap instead of gunpowder. Are you satisfied? I've washed the laundry of half the staff. Kumi stood up and wiped a smudge of soap off his forehead. I'm satisfied that you're finally calm. You're a leader, Kazimir, not a butcher. Remember that the next time you want to burn a city down. Kazimir looked at her, and for a fleeting second, the dragon disappeared completely. He reached out, his hand hovering near her waist, before he pulled back, still afraid of his own touch. You are the only person who has ever dared to make me feel small, Kumi. Why aren't you afraid of me? Kumi smiled, a soft, secret thing. Because I've seen you try to hide your smile when I make gyoza. A monster wouldn't care how it tastes. Kazimir is learning humility, but the underworld is a shark tank, and Nikolai, his own second-in-command, is starting to watch from the shadows with a hateful eye. Is the dragon becoming a man, or is he becoming a target? Don't forget to subscribe, like, and follow for more. You won't believe the trap that's being set for Kumi in Chapter 5. The Gala of Shadows. To the outside world, Kazimir Volkov was still the untouchable Pakhan, but inside the estate, the atmosphere had shifted. He was no longer just a tyrant, he was a man who looked for Kumi's nod of approval before he spoke. But Nikolai, Kazimir's cold-blooded second-in-command, saw this as a fatal weakness. He decided to lure the dragon and his tamer into a trap where their emotions would be their downfall. The occasion was the Obsidian Gala, a high society event where the Russian Bratva and Japanese Yakuza negotiated their yearly territories. Nikolai convinced Kazimir that Kumi should attend, not as a maid, but as his companion. To show them you've conquered her, Nikolai whispered, hiding his malice. Kazimir presented Kumi with a gift, a breathtaking kimono-style gown in deep crimson silk, embroidered with a silver dragon. When she stepped out, hair pinned up with a jade dagger, Kazimir forgot how to breathe. For the first time, he didn't see a debt servant, he saw his queen. At the gala, the air was cold with hidden daggers and fake smiles. As they moved through the ballroom, Kumi noticed something strange. Kazimir wasn't just intimidating the other bosses, he was subtly steering them away from a group of elderly businessmen. She realized then that Kazimir had been secretly protecting the small businesses in her old neighborhood, including her uncle's failed shop, keeping them safe from more predatory gangs. You're a secret saint, aren't you? She whispered as they shared a tense dance. Kazimir pulled her closer, his hand firm on her waist. I am a businessman, Kumi. Saints don't survive in Tokyo. But the night turned sour when Nikolai cornered Kumi near the balcony. He showed her a forged document, a shipping manifest with her uncle's name on it. Do you know why Kazimir bought you? Nikolai hissed. It wasn't a debt. He set your uncle up. He destroyed his business just to have a reason to own you. You aren't his heart, Kumi. You're his favorite trophy. Kumi felt the world tilt. She looked across the room at Kazimir, who was watching her with a rare, soft expression. Was it all a lie? Was his reformation just a long game to break her spirit? He's planning to trade you to the Yakuza next week for a shipping route, Nikolai lied, his voice a venomous purr. If you want to live, you should run tonight. As the fireworks began to explode over the bay, Kumi's heart shattered. She realized she had started to love the monster, only to find out he might have been the architect of her misery all along. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and follow for more. The web of lies is tightening. Will Kumi confront Kazimir, or will she vanish into the night? The search for the truth begins in Chapter 6. The Great Escape. Trust is a fragile thing, especially when it's built in a den of wolves. After Nikolai's revelation, Kumi couldn't look at Kazimir without seeing a puppeteer. Every kind gesture, every dish he'd washed, now felt like a calculated move to keep her compliant. That night, while the estate slept, Kumi didn't pack a bag. She took only the jade dagger from her hair and the small pendant her mother had left her. She knew the security better than anyone. She was the one who claimed the cameras, after all. She triggered a small grease fire in the kitchen, a distraction she knew would send the guards into a frenzy but wouldn't hurt anyone. In the chaos, she slipped through the laundry vent and vanished into the rainy Tokyo streets. When Kazimir found the kitchen charred and Kumi's room empty, the roar he let out was heard in the street below. He didn't just want her back, he wanted the world to pay for taking her. But then he found the red folder on his desk. Inside, Kumi had left a single note: "A chain is still a chain, even if it's made of gold. I'm not a trophy, Kazimir." Kazimir realized Nikolai had been in her ear. He turned to his lieutenant, his eyes glowing with a terrifying, murderous clarity. "If you touched her mind with your lies, Nikolai, I will make your death a masterpiece." But Nikolai had planned for this. He had already alerted the Yakuza that a high-value Volkov asset was fleeing toward the north. Kumi wasn't just running for her freedom, she was running straight into a war zone. Kumi hopped a series of freight trains, heading for the snowy peaks of Hokkaido, the only place she felt she could hide. She reached a remote cabin that belonged to her grandmother, thinking she was safe. But as the sun rose over the frozen pines, she heard the crunch of boots on the snow. She grabbed a heavy iron poker from the fireplace, ready to fight. But the door didn't burst open. There was a gentle, rhythmic knock, the same pattern Kazimir used to use on her kitchen door when he wanted tea. "Kumi," his voice called out, raw and broken. "I didn't set him up. I've spent $5 million and my entire reputation just to keep you from the people who actually wanted to hurt you. Please, let me explain. Is the dragon telling the truth, or is this just another trap?" Don't forget to subscribe, like, and follow for more. The final confrontation in the snow is coming in Chapter 7. The ice fortress standout. The cabin was surrounded. Not just by Kazimir, but by Nikolai's men and a rival Yakuza hit squad. Nikolai had decided to kill two birds with one stone, eliminate the Pakhan and the woman who made him weak. Kumi opened the door, her face pale. Kazimir stood in the snow, unarmed, his coat discarded despite the freezing wind. He looked exhausted, his aristocratic features haggard. "I don't believe you," Kumi whispered, the iron poker trembling in her hand. "Nikolai showed me the papers." "Nikolai wants my throne," Kazimir said, stepping closer until the iron poker pressed against his chest. "Go ahead. If you think I'm the man who destroyed your life, pull the trigger. But do it fast, because the men in the trees behind me don't care about the truth." Suddenly, a red laser dot appeared on Kumi's chest. Kazimir didn't hesitate. He didn't yell. He lunged forward, throwing his massive body over hers just as the first sniper round rang out. They tumbled into the cabin as bullets shredded the wooden door. "Kazimir!" Kumi screamed, feeling the warmth of his blood seeping into her sweater. He had taken a hit to the shoulder to shield her. "Stay down," he gasped, pulling a hidden pistol from his ankle holster. "I told you. I'd burn the city for you. I didn't say I wouldn't bleed for you, too." Outside, Nikolai's voice boomed over a megaphone. "Give her up, Kazimir. The Yakuza want the girl, and I want the title. You're dying for Maid." Kazimir looked at Kumi, a bloody, defiant smirk on his face. "She isn't a maid. She's the only person who ever told me the truth." He handed Kumi a spare magazine. "Can you load this? Or are you too busy judging my crooked tie?" Kumi wiped her tears, her old fire returning. She slammed the magazine into the gun and handed it back. "If we survive this, Kazimir, I'm doubling your chores for the next 10 years. "Deal," he whispered. The battle that followed was legendary. Kazimir fought like a demon possessed, using the cabin's tight corners to his advantage, while Kumi used her knowledge of the terrain to distract the attackers. When Nikolai finally burst through the back window, Kumi didn't wait for Kazimir. She used the jade dagger from the gala and buried it in Nikolai's shoulder, giving Kazimir the second he needed to disarm the traitor. The snow is stained red, and the lies have been burned away. But can a Mafia king and a maid truly have a future? Don't forget to subscribe, like, and follow for more. The epic conclusion is next in Chapter 8. The New Order. The aftermath of the Hokkaido battle left the Volkov Bratva in shock. Nikolai was gone, and the rival Yakuza clans had retreated, terrified by the sheer ferocity Kazimir had shown in protecting his servant. Back in Tokyo, Kazimir sat in his lemon-scented office, his arm in a sling. On his desk sat a stack of papers, not hit lists or shipping routes, but legal documents. Kumi walked in, carrying a tray of hot tea and her signature scowl. "You're late for your physical therapy," she said, setting the tea down. Kazimir pushed the papers toward her. "I burned the debt contract weeks ago, Kumi. I just didn't know how to tell you. These are the deeds to your uncle's shop, and a plane ticket to anywhere in the world. You're free. You were always free." Kumi looked at the ticket, then at the man who had almost died for her. The glacial dragon was looking at her with a vulnerability that no one else in the world would ever see. "You think I'm going to leave now?" Kumi asked, crossing her arms. "And leave this house to fall back into a pigsty? Who's going to make sure you eat your vegetables? Who's going to fix your ties?" Kazimir stood up, walking around the desk. He didn't grab her wrist or look down on her. He took her hand gently. "I don't want a maid, Kumi. I want a partner. Someone to tell me when I'm being a monster. Someone to rule this city with me." Kumi reached up, and for the last time, she twisted his ear, but gently, pulling his face down to hers. "Then you better get used to doing the dishes, Kazimir. Because in this house, the queen makes the rules." Kazimir laughed, pulling her into a kiss that tasted like lemon and redemption. The underworld had a new power couple, the dragon who ruled the streets, and the woman who ruled the dragon. And that is how a bold maid tamed the most ruthless man in the world. They say Kazimir Volkov never missed a meal again, and Kumi? She never had to clean a bloodstain she didn't want to. If you enjoyed this journey of fire and ice, don't forget to subscribe, like, and follow for more epic stories. Let us know in the comments, would you dare to twist a mafia boss's ear? See you in the next chapter.